Greetings everyone to our second week of Halloween-themed gaming for the month of October. I am your happy Halloween host, the Hipster Snek, and in some kind of long string of coincidences wherein I seem to inadvertently and yet continuously set myself up as some kind of that guy who reviews PS2 titles, even though I'm totally not. And yet I'm here to talk about an amazing PS2 RPG that was grossly overlooked, Okage Shadow King. It's a one-of-a-kind, quirky, turn-based RPG with a style almost like someone got Tim Burton to direct an anime. You know, like his good movies in the 80s and not those other ones. So, with a Halloween theme tied to it, let's dive right into this underrated classic. The game is hyper-stylized, with everything done in this sort of cel-shaded style with really stark contrast between lights and shadows. And more interestingly enough, this game came out in 2001, making it a pioneer in the style. And unlike Monster Rancher 3, which debuted the same year, it doesn't look like the art team had no idea what they were doing with it. Putting that aside, all the characters have eccentric personalities and strange, almost doll-like physiques, where the closest thing to normal in this game is likely the main character himself. The world is massive, filled to the brim with nooks and crannies to investigate, amidst lush forests or entire mechanized towns with elevators and metal walkways. Everything is detailed and sharp. You're never left wondering what you're looking at. Oh, except maybe the first time you see enemies spawn, as they'll appear on the overworld as these weird, cartoony cloud things. That might confuse you the first time you see them, because it sure did for me. This is all emphasized in that the main character, default name Ari, having been possessed by the Dark Lord, Stanley Hi-Hat Trinidad XIV, but you can just call him Stan, because subtle comedy. Anyways, run-on sentences aside, Dark Lord Stan comes to possess the main character and rides around, hidden just out of sight in his shadow. The two form a deal that Stan, who should be the rightful heir to the greatest throne of the ultimate evil king, or at least so he claims, has been usurped by a series of lesser Dark Lords who are siphoning off the totality of evil's power. So you have an assist the ultimate evil king by beating all the forces of evil in the world? So I guess that technically makes what you're doing good. Details, I guess. You then find to work at a heroes guild since, as posited, we are in fact fighting forces of evil, another delightful misunderstanding as the game proceeds into its rather zany story. And the game's sound design is just fun. The soundtrack is lively and it has this bounce to it, and the sound effects are sufficiently slapsticky enough to maintain its sense of humor even in the midst of combat. And honestly, that's really all I have to say on sound. It's good stuff, and it helps serve the tone of the game well. The core gameplay handles like a traditional turn-based RPG, with you being able to inspect things and speak to NPCs on the overworld and issuing commands based on a sliding action bar, like the action timer bar in Final Fantasy. The game employs a simple element system, and gives you a half-dozen characters to swap in and out as you need. By the way, Rosalind is best waifu. World Tree Cycles, or Ditaku, actually agrees with me on this, so we know it to be true. What elevates this game above the common riffraff and other early PS2 RPGs is found in its writing and its theming. Evil King Stan is a childish, petulant brat. The main character is a deadpan snarker who doesn't want the role of hero, or anti-hero as case may be, thrust upon him. Rosalind, the paladin-like young lady who you meet fairly early, taunts Stan and bickers with him like they're small children. Every character is just a delight to see in motion. Nari himself is mostly dragged through it all as a reluctant hero who would much rather go back to his as close to ordinary as he can get life. To give just a few examples of this comedic writing in motion, the main character's family is in a pretty big hurry to rush him out the door once Stan enters the picture, even though it's largely their fault that the main character is in the predicament he's in. Or Rosalind will invite the protag into a dark room, and then observes that Stan can't manifest if Ari isn't presently casting a shadow, then proceeds to mock Stan for this. Or how when a doll comes to life and begins staking claims on the protag, much to Stan's annoyance, they resolve it by splitting him 70-30 whether he likes it or not. And lastly, a personal story of mine, Stan will randomly start off some battles by asking you random questions. So imagine my shock when he prompts me to say his name, and my options were a series of 2-letter syllables. I didn't see Stan in the options, so I jokingly picked Pooh, P-U. Then he prompted me to go on, which made me realize the question was originally asking for the Japanese characters that made up his name. So I inadvertently redubbed him Dark Lord Pootan, and yes, my inner 13-year-old found this absolutely hilarious. Though I must confess that attempting to explain comedy is the fastest way to make it not funny. It's a game that rightfully should be played and experienced firsthand. And were I to find fault with the game, it's that it's unbelievably grindy. You will need to take the time out to grind either for sheer levels or for money to improve your team's equipment. While the relative difficulty of enemies encountered is announced as soon as the weird cloud appears on the map, with white being harmless, blue being tame, and red being dangerous, and so on, you will need to grind a lot and grind often. To give just one random example, when I entered a fairly early sewer dungeon, I was immediately beset upon by a red enemy cloud and fighting enemies way stronger than I could reasonably take on at that point. So my first hour or so in this dungeon and each subsequent one was spent grinding in order to match the difficulty. This game will not allow you to rest on your laurels. Second, there's not much in the way of side quests. You'll always be moving forward in the storyline, and while the story is fun and I was excited to meet the new characters, that still didn't stop moments where I had the "what do I do now" syndrome kick in, and I found myself using the fast travel zone to leap between cities, all the while desperately trying to find the next event flag. And lastly, there's only one ending and you don't really get any influence over it, so you end up in a worst waifu situation. Sorry, I know, I shoot for spoiler-free reviews, but it had to be said. But those are all very minor flaws when it comes to an early PS2 JRPG. And I even have good news. As of 2016, Okage Shadow King is available on the PS4 store, link in the description below, and it's a widescreen re-release. This game is playable this Halloween right away. Begs the question why this game didn't get even passing mention in PlayStation All-Stars, but I've ragged on that game sufficiently for now. This has been the Halloween Hipster Snek, Lord of Candy, and if you like what you saw here today, make sure you hit that convenient like button. If you want more tricks and treats, be sure to hit the subscribe and bell icons now to not miss out. Lastly, if you want to help me buy some candy this Halloween, you can even become a patron at my Subscribe Star page, link down below. Join us next week for even more spooky goodness, and I'll see you there.